Now coming to the therapeutic uses of the oxytocin. Continuing with the therapeutic uses of the oxytocin, oxytocin does not contract the lower segment, so does not interfere with the descent. So this is another point why oxytocin is preferred for the induction of the labor. It does not contract the lower segment, so does not interfere with the descent of the fetus. Fetal descent is not obstructed. The second important use is the uterine inertia. Now why oxytocin is used in uterine inertia? Now what is uterine inertia? Uterine inertia is a condition where the labor does not progress. There is no progression of the labor. The labor does not progress because of weak uterine contractions. The uterine contractions are very weak and feeble, and hence there is no progress of the labor. This is the state of uterine inertia. In this condition, oxytocin is used to increase the intensity, frequency and duration of the uterine contractions during labor, so that labor can progress very well. Third important use is in PPH. In PPH, oxytocin is used because it can be used to prevent the postpartum hemorrhage, where it is used at a little higher doses. It contracts the uterine smooth muscles, resulting in compression of the blood vessels. So this leads to the compression of the blood vessels and the PPH can be prevented. Now coming to the adverse reactions and contraindications of oxytocin. Oxytocin can lead to uterine rupture. Then fetal asphyxia, fetal death can occur because of the overdose of the oxytocin. Headache, vomiting, drowsiness and convulsions can occur because of the water intoxication caused by oxytocin. So these are the signs of the water intoxication. Then hypotension can occur because of vasodilatation and reflex tachycardia as a result of hypotension. So these are the various adverse reactions of the oxytocin. Coming to the contraindications, these are the cephalopelvic disproportion, then placenta previa. So in cephalopelvic disproportion, labor does not occur and you have to do cesarean section. So cephalopelvic disproportion is a contraindication. Another contraindication is placenta previa. Then history of cesarean section, classical cesarean section. So this is another contraindication of the to the use of the oxytocin. Then transverse lie, malpresentation, and if any sign of the fetal distress. If there is a sign of fetal distress, you should not give the oxytocin to the patient. Now coming to the ergot derivatives. Ergot derivatives, these are another drugs which lead to the uterine stimulation. So these are another important group of drugs leading to the uterine stimulation or uterine contraction. These are the ergometrin, methyl ergometrin. Pharmacological actions of the ergot derivatives. Now coming to the pharmacological actions of the ergot derivatives, these are the first is the on the uterus. It leads to the contraction of the upper as well as lower segment. Now this is different from the oxytocin, where oxytocin only contracts the upper segment and does not lead to the contraction of the lower segment. Then force, frequency, duration of contraction is increased by the ergot derivatives, leading to the contraction of the upper as well as lower segment. Now coming to the low dose. At low dose there is relaxation in between the two contraction. When the ergot derivatives are used at lower doses, it leads to the relaxation in between the two contractions. Then at higher doses, there can be sustained contraction without any relaxation in between. This is a state of uterine tetany. Uterine tetany can occur. Basal tone of the smooth muscles is increased. So this is another difference between oxytocin and ergometrin, that the oxytocin does not increase basal tone while ergot derivatives increase the basal tone. Coming to the pharmacokinetics of the ergot derivatives can be given by oral as well as parenteral route or intravenous route. The action is rapid within minutes. There is a rapid onset of action when it is given by IV route. On intramuscular route, the onset of action is delayed after 3 to 5 minutes. Then after oral route, it is further delayed for 15 to 20 minutes. So the onset of action is delayed after oral route. The drugs are metabolized in the liver and excreted in the urine. Now coming to the therapeutic uses of the ergot derivatives. Therapeutic uses of the ergot derivatives for the prevention and treatment of the postpartum hemorrhage. Now, for prophylaxis of postpartum hemorrhage, it is given after the delivery of the anterior shoulder as a prophylactic. So, it is given by intramuscular route after delivery of the anterior shoulder. Here, methyl ergometrin is preferred because it is more potent. 0.2 milligram is given intramuscularly prophylactically, and to control the PPH it is given by intravenous route. 0.2 milligram is given intravenously to control the postpartum hemorrhage. These drugs are preferred because they cause sustained uterine muscle contraction leading to compression of the blood vessels. So leading to the compression of the blood vessels, these drugs are used. They cause sustained uterine contraction without any relaxation in between, and hence the bleeding will stop. Then second use is after cesarean section to prevent the uterine atony and control the bleeding. Bleeding occurs because of uterine atony after cesarean section. Hence, after cesarean section, as a prophylactic measure, you have to give ergot derivatives to the patient to prevent the uterine atony and control the bleeding. Then another important use of ergometrin is in the third use is to hasten the involution of the uterus. So to hasten the involution of the uterus, generally ergometrin is given by oral route. Sometimes there is no involution and bleeding will continue in the patient after the labor for many days, and so to hasten the involution of uterus, ergometrin is given by oral route. Coming to the adverse reactions, these are the nausea, vomiting, hypertension can occur. Contraindications are the heart disease, hypertension, peripheral vascular disease, sepsis, preeclampsia, eclampsia. So these are the various contraindications for the ergot derivatives. Now coming to the prostaglandins in obstetrics. Now the prostaglandins are another uterine stimulants which are used in the obstetric. Prostaglandins used are the prostaglandin E1, that is misoprostol, prostaglandin E2, that is dinoprostone, and 15-methyl-PGF2 alpha, that is the carboprost. Pharmacological actions. It is a uterine stimulant, contracts the uterus. This contraction is more in the second trimester, and sensitivity is less in the first and the third trimester. Sensitivity is increased by mifepristone. Mifepristone is a progesterone antagonist which increases the sensitivity to the prostaglandins. So mifepristone increases sensitivity of the uterus to the prostaglandins. So these two are given together. Then coming to the next use as a cervical primer. Now what is cervical primer or cervical priming? Cervical priming means to cause cervical ripening. Ripening means to hasten the process of cervical dilatation and making it soft. So the uterus is the cervix is made soft and it gets dilated. This is known as cervical ripening, and the process is known as cervical priming. So for cervical priming, prostaglandins are used before abortion, before inducing abortion, and at the time of the labor or at the time of the delivery. Now coming to the adverse reactions and contraindications of the prostaglandins. Adverse reactions are, they can cause nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, diarrhea, headache, fever. So these are the various adverse reactions of the prostaglandins. Then contraindications are the cardiac disease. Cardiac disease is a major contraindication for the use of prostaglandins. Then hypertension, diabetes, epilepsy, hepatic disease, pulmonary disease. So these are all the contraindications to the use of the prostaglandins. Now coming to the therapeutic uses of the prostaglandins in obstetrics. First is the abortion. So termination of pregnancy in the second trimester or mid-trimester abortion. Here carboprost, misoprostol, any one can be used intravenously or intramuscularly or topically as a cervical jelly or vaginal jelly. Here it can be combined with the mifepristone. It can be combined with the mifepristone where it causes cervical ripening and that induces uterine contractions. Then cervical priming. As an endocervical gel it can be used. Suppositories for the cervical priming. to make the cervix soft and dilated. Then in postpartum hemorrhage, carboprost can be given intramuscularly to control the postpartum hemorrhage which occurs due to uterine atony. So this can be used, carboprost can be effectively used to control the postpartum hemorrhage. Then next use is in induction and augmentation of labor, where carboprost or misoprostol or dinoprostone can be used. Oxytocin is preferred for the induction of labor, but in renal failure or in preeclampsia where the oxytocin is contraindicated, prostaglandins can be used. Now coming to the next group of drugs, that is the uterine relaxant. These are also known as tocolytics. Uterine relaxants are known as tocolytics. Tocolytics are the drugs which inhibit uterine contractions or which cause relaxation of the uterine smooth muscles. Now let us see something about preterm labor. Preterm labor is a condition which occurs before 37 weeks of gestation. So when the labor is starting before 37 weeks of gestation, it is known as the preterm labor. Now we have to prevent the preterm labor because the fetus is not matured, the lungs are not matured. So you have to prevent the preterm labor. Now the major goal in preventing preterm labor is to minimize the neonatal complications and death, because the neonatal growth is not there and lungs are also not matured, hence there can be death of the neonate. So to prevent the neonatal complications and death, we are preventing the preterm labor. Now coming to the classification of these drugs, tocolytics, first is the beta-2 agonist. These are the ritodrine, salbutamol. So beta-2 receptor agonist, salbutamol, ritodrine. Then oxytocin receptor antagonist. This is the atosiban. Calcium channel blockers, nifedipine, magnesium sulfate, nitric oxide donors. This is the nitroglycerin. So all these drugs are having uterine smooth muscle relaxant property and they relax the uterus. Now coming to the beta adrenergic receptor agonist, beta-2 receptor agonist. These are the salbutamol, ritodrine. So beta-2 receptors are located on the uterine smooth muscles and when they are stimulated they cause uterine relaxation. They delay the preterm labor. So salbutamol is a beta-2 agonist which are located on the various smooth muscles. Ritodrine is also a beta-2 agonist, so it stimulates the beta-2 receptors on the uterine smooth muscles and causes relaxation of the uterine smooth muscles, and this leads to the inhibition of the contractions and relaxation of the uterus. So they delay the preterm labor by inhibiting uterine contractions in uncomplicated labor. Now salbutamol relaxes uterine smooth muscle by stimulating the beta-2 receptors. It can be given by IV infusion very slowly. Adverse reactions of the salbutamol are the nausea, vomiting, tremors, tachycardia, hypokalemia and pulmonary edema. So these are the various adverse reactions of the salbutamol: nausea, vomiting, tremors, tachycardia, hypokalemia and pulmonary edema. Then ritodrine is also given by slow IV infusion. These drugs are contraindicated in heart disease or cardiac disease, angina, myocardial infarction, congestive cardiac failure, then hypertension and preeclampsia. So these are the major contraindications to the beta-2 receptor agonist. Coming to the other drugs used as a tocolytic, these are the nifedipine, which is given by the sublingual route. Nifedipine is quite safe. It relieves the neonatal complications and it is given by sublingual route. Then COX inhibitors or the cyclooxygenase inhibitors. These are the indomethacin, which inhibits the cyclooxygenase enzyme non-selectively. Now indomethacin inhibits cyclooxygenase enzyme and so the prostaglandin synthesis is inhibited. Prostaglandins are nothing but uterine stimulants, as you know, and so by inhibiting the prostaglandin synthesis, they act as a tocolytic. Prostaglandins are involved in the initiation of the normal labor. Now indomethacin can be safely used, but it should not be given if the pregnancy is more than 32 weeks. If the gestation is more than 32 weeks, it should not be given. Why? Because indomethacin leads to the premature closure of ductus arteriosus. So to prevent the premature closure of ductus arteriosus, it is contraindicated above or more than 32 weeks of pregnancy. Tocolytic should not be given for more than 48 hours. Should not be given for more than 48 hours, and treatment should be individualized. So every patient requires different doses of the tocolytic. Some require less, some require more. So the treatment should be individualized, and uterine contractions should be monitored, fetal heart rate, maternal heart rate, blood pressure, these should be monitored. So these are the important points for the tocolytics. So with this we finish the drugs acting on the uterus. We finish uterine stimulants and uterine relaxants. So we have covered almost all the drugs. So with this I end today's lecture. Thank you.